And a very pleasant good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off. I am Jonathan McNamara, coming to you, as always, from Richmond, Virginia. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking to Devin Ravenel and Percy Agyei-Obese about their news about playing in the CFL together. Two Dukes joining up with the BC Lions. We're going to learn about their preparations for the upcoming CFL season. And then we're going to have a roundtable discussion with our friend Dave Riggert, talk a little bit of men's basketball action, as well as to get into some latest news surrounding the JMU football team. So stay tuned for that. And as always, our broadcast brought to you by our friends at the Montpelier Collective. Still a few hours left if you're somebody who wants to get a ticket for the unique men's basketball experience, a coach for the day. Your raffle ticket opportunity is still available. Visit the Montpelier Collective social accounts for an opportunity to purchase your tickets. Tickets go on sale through, I believe, 11 p.m. or midnight tonight. So a few hours left to get those tickets. And again, this is going to be an experience for two JMU fans to be able to experience the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as Mark Byington shared with us a few weeks ago. So again, please get your tickets. All of those dollars go in to support the Montpelier Collective's efforts to support student athletes on campus. And our friends from Skyline Financial Partners, thanks to Tim Nelson and crew for continuing to support our broadcast. We did, off the top of the broadcast, want to mention that if you are an RVA Duke, next Saturday, as the Dukes get set to take on Appalachian State, our friends over at Kindred Spirits Brewing Party will be hosting a viewing party for that game, as well as a concert with Laburnum Park, local band here in the Richmond area. Barry Sadamon, Eric Boland, great night of JMU Dukes basketball and some great music over at Kindred Spirits. That will start at 6 p.m. and go throughout the game. They're going to be playing a couple of sets. So a great night for Richmond area JMU fans in an opportunity to true on is a huge game against App State. So look for that information. It's on our social channels as well. And with that, we'll bring in our co-hosts for tonight, Michael Evangelista, Taylor Atkins, and Steve Brown. Guys, lots going on in the JMU universe. Michael, welcome back. 70 degrees and sunny out in San Diego. I know it was a big week for you. It was weird. Your social media channels were off, so we were wondering where we're going to get our recruiting news from this week.
I know.
How was the week out on the West Coast?
I was gonna say, surprise, surprise. I do have a day job, so I had to go out to awful San Diego.
Doesn't pay the bills. The podcast's not paying the bills just yet.
Soon enough, I hope. But yeah, it was beautiful out in San Diego, 70 sunny the entire time. But it looks like we got some big news. We got 3 commits over the past week. We officially announced the coaching hires with some really big news with 2 local guys from Virginia, with Justin Harper and Sam Daniels, a JMU football alum. So really awesome announcements there. Really excited about what the staff can do next year.
Awesome. Taylor, how was your week? I know you were up in Harrisonburg for the game. Your thoughts on was another big win for JMU men's basketball. 2 wins after they dropped the loss to App State, getting them again towards the top of the table in the Sun Belt.
It was good. It was up there Thursday and Saturday. Good showing from the students on Thursday night. Saturday, we had a lot more of probably the local community and some alumni that were able to travel out of town, but both good crowds. Saturday especially, I mean, to be consistently putting in 6,000 plus into the Atlantic Union Bank Center is a great, I think we were the second highest attendance of games on Saturday. I believe we're still second in the Sun Belt, right behind Old Dominion, which already has a good history and tradition. But, you know, the top 4, the 4 teams they added to the Sun Belt are leading the Sun Belt in attendance in basketball. So bringing that brand up. And I did joke yesterday a little bit. I was talking with our buddy Nate from the student body president of JMU, that when you go to a JMU game, they have that one side, which is bleachers. And those are because they're retractable bleachers for concerts and stuff. And then we have the other side with the chairback seats. The students in the bleachers are standing up the whole game. They're rowdy. The students in the chairback seats, you know, they sit down, they put their pinky up when they drink, you know, a little bit of a wine and cheese crowd. Would love to see that student section, who I know they're diehards because they get there early, they fill it up, they're loud. Just need to see them stare across the court at their counterparts, and let's get both sections behind the baskets good and rowdy.
Awesome. And Steve, big week for the Montpelier Collective. Again, we're really doing everything we can to drive as many people to that unique men's basketball experience. Lots going on with the collective. Just your thoughts on anything in the JMU universe before we get to our first 2 guests.
Yeah, it's a big week on the coaches deal. We're going to get the thing to 10,000. We're very close to getting it to 10,000. Hopefully, we can go more than 10. And you know, that money's going toward, you know, helping these guys out in terms of, and the women as well. So everything's going well on the JMU side. Everything's looking great. cold weather didn't scare anybody, and I'm looking forward to us going to Baboon, North Carolina next Saturday and knocking the tar out of those guys on their home court. But I know we got a game before that at ODU, so it's always fun to go play Old Dirty. But really looking forward to the App State game on Saturday.
Yeah, and kudos, speaking of ODU, to the women's team that continues to do well this season, and another win over ODU this past weekend. So shout out to Coach O'Regan and the women's squad, who continue to have a really good start to the season. But before we get to some basketball talk, we did want to have on two former Dukes who have.
Well, John, if I may, want to do
Sure.
a little bit of some breaking news on the recruiting front.
That's what you're here for.
Exactly. Former UConn receiver Cam Ross just committed to JMU. He's got 2 years left. He was our leading receiver in 2019 with 60 catches. He's actually a Delaware. He's from the New York, Delaware area. Did well in 2021, had a couple of injuries last year, and he's got 2 years left. So 5'10", 185. I can see him in the slot, maybe a little bit outside. Productive guy, older receiver. Go Dukes. It's like we picked up some more depth there.
He's a bigger, faster Chris Thornton. I saw him play in 19. That kid's unbelievably good.
And credit to Chandler Fortune having the graphics ready. This is the benefit of having a producer, even though if he was last minute. So nicely done, Chandler. With that, we'll get the breaking news with our two former Dukes, Percy Agyei-Obese and Dave. I had Dave Riggert. Man, Dave, you just come in too. Why not? We'll just this is Chandler. Sorry, man. I'm working it when I know that's your job. And Devin Ravenel, guys, we asked you in the pre-show if you knew the Canadian national anthem. I asked that because you had some big news recently, making your official signings with the BC Lions of the CFL. Start with you first, Percy. Just tell us how this news came to be and how excited you are to be able to make the trip up to Canada and the western portion of Canada with a former teammate in Devin Ravenel.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show, first of all. And yeah, so I've been talking to the BC Lions for a little bit now. I mean, we've been going back and forth, and yeah, it just ultimately came to the conclusion that like this would be the place for me. And so, I mean, I was excited for it when we finally came down to the final deals and just coming up to like the final days of like, yep, this is solidified. This is where I'm going to be. So it's been exciting. It's been exciting with my families, my coaches, and the love of JMU too has been great also.
And Devin, tell us how your signing came to be. And when did you find out that you and Percy be on the same team?
My bad, I was muted. All right. Yeah, so I was supposed to go up for this past CFL season. Or that's what I had in mind when they had planned on talking to me originally, right after Pro Day and things like that. And so things kind of just fell through for this past season, and we just kept in touch. You know, Ryan, the GM for the BC Lions, assistant GM, we just kept in touch and just kept talking, kept saying they were interested, and eventually just around November, they just pulled the trigger. And then I'd say about a month and a half after, Percy started, we started texting and stuff like that. And he was like, hey, man, you know, I'm starting to talk to the guy too. And I'm just like, hey, I mean, not to say it's a blessing in disguise, but I mean, shoot, it's a beautiful opportunity that both of us have very been interested in. So it's very nice.
Well, and before the show, we were talking about the success of another JMU Duke, Clint Kent, who we were talking about maybe trying to get a chance to connect y'all. But, you know, a lot of really great players have played in the Canadian Football League, have made great professional careers there. You know, there seems to be a growing demand for professional football outside of the NFL. You know, there's the recent XFL, USFL merger that created, I believe it was the United Football League. So I would just love to hear kind of your journey, what it's been like after JMU, both from a training perspective and then when evaluating, you know, were there opportunities that were attractive there and the CFL, and how were you deciding to kind of navigate that post-JMU football career, but still pursuing professional football? And I guess, Percy, I'll ask you first, then Devin, would love to hear from you.
Okay. Well, so coming from JMU, so my last game at JMU, I tore my Achilles. So the whole process for me kind of it changed. So it went from having to, like, I had to I had a kind of like a minimized pro day. So I wasn't able to go out there and do everything that I could do for pro day just because of the recovery of the Achilles and like the length that it took. So just going through the process and just having a minimized pro day, just not being able to do what I could have done. Just, I just did bench. Um, I was still getting looks after. I was still getting offers for camps and things like that. But the thing is, like, during the process, I couldn't go because of the length of an Achilles rehab, and I wasn't ready at the time to be able to play football. So just going through the process, I started talking to different teams, NFL teams, and just staying in touch with them. And then I've also been talking to a couple of CFL teams, staying in touch with them. They've been telling me just to keep them in the mix, and that they're just going to keep checking up on my rehab and my recovery process. And we were just kind of playing like a waiting game. And then it came to the point where I've reached the end of my rehab, and I've gotten to a point where I feel like I'm back to being myself. And like throughout this whole process, it was definitely a grind, like between PT and then training every single day. And what was great actually is at one of my local PT spots, one of my former teammates, Grant Westbrook, he used to be a safety for JMU. He was actually my PT. So it was great just talking to him and talking about the season as well, and as we're doing the PT. So that also helped me through the process, as well as like the support from my family and my former teammates too, which was big time. They were always behind my back. Devin, Jordan Swan, Toddy, Chris Thornton, and like a bunch of guys, Sam Kidd, a bunch of other guys I can name, and even my former coaches too. They always had my support too. They were helping me out, and it was just great to see the love and support coming from everyone as I was just going through my journey.
Yeah, and Devin, when we had you on earlier this year, and we kind of ended the broadcast, you were talking about continuing to train, continuing to seek opportunities professionally. So tell me a little bit about your journey and how that got there.
Yeah, so it was kind of the same, and it was also a lot different. So I had the opportunity to be able to perform during pro day and trained really hard for that leading up to it. And it was kind of a reassuring afterward, because like you don't know if you're gonna ever get a chance to even play football again. So once you get you finish that day and there's all the pressure kind of relieving a little bit, and you start to talk to a few people. Like I talked to the Ravens and the Tennessee Titans, and just from there, the Ravens were kind of the only team that was just kept talking to me, trying to get me up there. And I eventually went to rookie minicamp with KT. We both ended up going there, and Swan as well. So all three of us. So it seemed like everywhere I go, there's always a familiar face. But it was definitely it was a great moment to have. It was a great learning experience, and I was pretty banged up going into it, and it was just like a lot more stress afterward to kind of just keep your body right while also keeping your body in shape at the same time. And so it's just kind of like keeping the balance in those two aspects of your life, along with everything else going on. And the talk with the Ravens kind of started to dwindle away a little bit. The CFL, like I wasn't going up there for this past season, and it was kind of like the reality was starting to hit, like, damn, like maybe I don't have this opportunity anymore. And so, I was still going up to Northern Virginia and working out with Sam Kidd. And I have a friend back home, AJ Castro, shout out to him. He was just keeping me in shape. He'd keep me in the gym and stuff like that. And we'd go to the field. And so it was just like, it was a lot of discipline. It took a lot of discipline. And, straight out of college, like we were talking about before, when some of the finance things that some of the current players, Julio, he's bringing that to the football association and things like that. So it was just things like that. I didn't have the money. I didn't have any money. Like my parents are willing to help, but it was starting to get to a point where it's just like, all right, you're gonna do something or figure something out, and I could just like kind of see it in their faces. So I just picked up a delivery job doing Amazon for 4 or 5 months, from like September to December, August to December, and just keeping on a schedule, working out in the mornings when I can, working out on the weekend because I was only working 4 days. So I have 4 days on, then I have Thursday through Saturday off. And so just kind of like finding that balance, really just learning about who I am. It was just, it was a big mental game, I would say. It was a lot more mental, and it took a lot more patience than a lot of people are used to leading up to, this point in my life. So, yeah.
Well, the two things I think that stood out the most that both you and Percy harped on, one, just the grind and how dedicated you all have been to your passion and getting to this point. But two, I love that both of you were shouting out numerous players that you played with throughout your journey. And it just shows that JMU bond that just goes so far beyond your playing days. And I love hearing you guys continue to shout out so many names and talk about the guys that not only have come alongside of you and your training and everything, but, Devin, you even mentioned, that there's so many JMU guys that are getting looks at professional football opportunities that I think maybe sometimes the JMU fan base may take for granted. But that JMU is a program where it's at that level now where that is an expectation. You can come here and continue your career afterwards. So, Dave, since we got you here, and I know these are two players of yours that you've had a lot of time in your position, if you have any questions for Devin and Percy.
Well, I guess I was thinking while you guys were both talking, first of all, good to see you guys. It's been a while, been a minute since got to see you. But was there ever a point in time going through the grind, and you guys were talking about how mental it is right now, was there ever a point in time when just thought maybe I'll just hang it up and not want to continue this dream to go on and play pro football?
Honestly, there wasn't really a time that I felt like I've had that mindset, because I felt like I always knew the ability that I can do. My mindset throughout the whole process was I didn't get my opportunity. Pro day, I didn't get my opportunity. I haven't shown what I can truly do. And I the way I look at it is I didn't get my opportunity. I'm getting looks. And I feel like that just goes to show my resume is going to speak for itself. So I'm all right, if I'm getting looks and I didn't get my opportunity, I can still play ball. I haven't got, once I get on the field, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to play ball. But I mean, there was times where it's those thoughts started to creep in, or I feel like just outside people who don't understand the process too would try and give input and stuff like that. But those thoughts I didn't really let affect me or let really creep in, because I knew my plan. I had my plan. I made my schedule, and my focus is what my focus was. So that's where it was with me.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much hit it on the head. We always had, or as far as what he was saying, just always had that mindset of it was just ball. We had our time in college. We missed out on some opportunity. Percy missed out on some opportunities. I had some experiences, and it's just once I got my feet wet, it's just that was the main goal. Every day, every morning, it didn't matter what would come up, what I would think about. There's always those thoughts, you got them negative thoughts. You got some negative comments from people, whoever it might be. But it's just at the end of the day, I mean, it's just, we just had to take control. And this is the first time we ever got to take control of our own lives and be able to do what we want to actually do with it and have control over what we do day to day, what we partake in, who we're hanging around, just things like that. It just started to turn into the small things, just the details, and just getting primed on all those attention to detail things. So just keep that discipline going.
So I've got a quick question here, right? I think as someone that follows the football personnel so closely, it's so awesome to see you two continue to follow your dreams, play professionally, and get that opportunity coming up. Would love to hear, right? I've always said, JMU has been able to recruit at a very high level. Percy, I remember, I think the entire CAA wanted you. You've had some FBS offers. Devin, as a Charlottesville guy, I did notice that UVA had some last-second pushes before you joined JMU. Tell us a little bit about, what did the BC Lions see in you, right? Like, what is about your game on the field that they particularly like, that they think you can contribute? Percy, maybe we'll start with you, and Devin will follow up.
Yeah, so just talking with like some of the GM and the coaches, they pretty much said to me, they said they watched my film and they're like, we stopped it right there. And you were like, you fit perfectly into what we need. They're like, we need a strong, powerful, fast running back who's able to take it for 60 if we need it, or be in the red zone and score us touchdowns. And they're like, you fit the exact criteria that we need. And they're like, we want you. Like, you're the exact running back we want. Like, you fit perfectly. You're the final piece. And yeah, that after that, I was just like, yep, this is the place.
Awesome. And by film, you mean you showed them the Arkansas State game, right? Like on 4th
Oh,
and
yeah.
1?
Oh yeah. They said they rewinded that one a couple times.
Awesome. Devin, how about you?
It was a long process, but we had started chatting more after pro day, and they had seen some of the numbers I had put up, seen I was a fast guy, and they watched my film and saw that even though I wasn't as big as other receivers, maybe, that I was still going in like blocking defensive ends, linebackers, whatever was needed. And if I wasn't getting the ball a lot, so I just had to work on every part of my game to be better at that aspect. And it was just more of I was an unselfish player, and that was just something that they liked, because there's a lot of games in the CFL season. There's a lot of receivers, it's 3 downs instead of 4, so it's a lot more throwing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more opportunity out there. And so it was kind of a gimme. It was just I just kind of fit in. Like, he's a North Carolina guy. He had watched JMU, so he was kind of already knowing about JMU beforehand, and so he was kind of a no-brainer.
I think your last game versus Tulsa with 3 scores probably didn't help.
Yeah, it's a baller.
Nice work.
Well, you got some interesting guys on that team. So when you get up there, make sure you say hello to Chase Bryce from App State, your backup QB. Make sure you maybe throw him a JMU purple hat and let him know, how much we enjoy going to Boone and taking it from him. We're going to do it again to him in 24, just so you can remind him of that. And you got you remember Forrest Ryan from Villanova, the linebacker?
Yeah,
he's on that team too.
Oh, for real? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. So you got some interesting guys up there. So I was looking at some other things. The average attendance is the size of Bridgeforth. They averaged 25,703 in 2023. So you're going to have the same, which is great. Passionate crowd. So pack some like black and orange streamers, and maybe you can introduce some streamer throwing to those folks in Vancouver. So my question for you guys is, you guys have both been through a JMU coaching change. So I'll start with Devin on this, and we'll end up with Percy. But give the folks that are listening kind of a little bit of inside look of what happens when you've got a coaching change, and kind of where the guys are at this point. They're 6 weeks in with Chesney. Kind of that weird bowl piece, which you guys never had, which was kind of, Robo is the head coach, but Chesney and some of his coaches already there working. But he's really been at the helm since the bowl game, so we can say it's been a month. Give us a little bit of insight on how that all works.
It's just as chaotic as you guys probably think it is, because we're just so used to going in. You got lift this day, you got film this day, you got practice this day, and you got classes at whatever time. So we're just kind of on the schedule, and we just keep following it. And then it's just one day we go into meetings, and it's just, oh, do you see this on Twitter? And it's just like sources say, do you think Houston is going to so-and-so, Charlotte, I think at the time. And so we're sitting there in the film room, and some of the coaches don't know about it either. So they're just like, all right, it's probably just propaganda or whatever. And then like 15 minutes later, it comes out that he's leaving, and everybody was like more confused, and because like we still had a season to go. Like we had Colgate, that we were playing Colgate in the playoffs that year.
Yeah, we're in the playoffs.
We had, Delaware first round. Is that what it was? Delaware first round.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it was really weird, and especially like coming off a good season, we thought or it wasn't our best season, but we thought it was good enough to where we would get a first round bye, and it's just things just turned. Like it just happened really quick. And I would say the main thing was just how the leaders on the team kind of went about it, because like we didn't have that authority from up top. Like we had like a lot more freedom. It's not like things were kind of planned in a sense. So it was just like it really took a stepping up from the leaders, and they were having a lot of meetings amongst each other. And like it was Mike Green, I know Rondell, DACA, some of the older guys, I know Cole Ben, like it was a lot of the older guys, Riley Stapleton. I mean, I can go on, the list goes on and on, but it was more just like the role they played, just the mentorship they brought all the young guys in with. And it was really just that mentality. It was also a lot different than this time around too, because the transfer portal, wasn't as hot as it is right now. So the transfer portal was brand new. So no one was really like itchy to go jump in the transfer portal. Like there wasn't a lot of benefits today or then as there is today. So, it was very chaotic, but it built the team up, got the guys really close, and it just made us depend on each other a lot more.
And I was going to ask you both really quick, Drew, now that you've transitioned over to the JMU fan side and former players, I think your perspective, though, is interesting on now seeing what is going on with the transfer portal and NIL, and seeing, 25 guys under the portal for some teams, and the amount of roster turnover that is happening. I'm curious, how do you see it as both a former player, though, but as also a fan of a program? Because, like all of us, you get excited for what next year's roster can look like. And then you have this trend, and it works both ways. I mean, you're obviously getting guys like the breaking news that excite you, but then to see some of these faces and names, that have transitioned. I'm just curious, your thoughts on what you've seen.
Oh, as a fan, I hate it. Yeah. I love to see all these guys at JMU, all these people that I played with and had, shared practices with, shared film with, and all that stuff. I love to see them at JMU. And like, as a fan, it does suck just seeing a lot of people leave. But I mean, at the end of the day, like these kids have their own lives to live, and they have to go about it however way they think is going to make them the most successful in the end. And so I will never be anybody. I'll never feel any type of way about that. Just as a player, a former player, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, like keeping your body healthy. Some of these people don't know if they're gonna get the playing time that they used to. It's just like playing time comes into it. You don't know what kind of relationships you're going to be able to build with the new staff, and it's a long list of things that it doesn't seem like a big deal until you're put in a scenario where you have to deal with situations day in and day out. And so it's just like, people got to make their decisions, but as a fan, not a fan of it.
Yeah, just definitely taking it from like being a fan, like, yeah, you love to see the JMU guys there. You love to see everybody in the purple and gold. Like, that's what we love to see. But like when you flip it over to like the player perspective, like I understand, I get it. When you're looking at it from that situation, you're looking at it as what's gonna be best for me, what's gonna put me in the most successful spot. And pretty much that's how you gotta look at it, because at the end of the day, there's some players that may have played for JMU where it's like, okay, I love JMU, I love being in this spot, but I know that if I stay here, I will not see the field. I will not play on the field. And sometimes you have to put yourself in better opportunities, or opportunities where you feel like you're going to excel and reach your maximum potential. So it sucks sometimes, but I understand it from a player perspective too.
Well, guys, it means a lot for you guys to come back on the podcast. I biasly, I think is the word I'm looking for. You two are two of my favorite Dukes. Devin, you're not just you and your brother, but your dad in the stands makes game days one of a kind. And both you and your brother were just so. You played such a large role for some of the best teams ever at JMU. And so for that, and then continuing to stay involved and engage with JMU, it means a ton. And Percy, there's so much that I can say about you, not just your play on the field, but just you've seen Michael's that little video that he puts up every time a recruit says they're looking at JMU, and you talk about how JMU's the place to be. But you, as an ambassador, both on and off the field, is something that really just means a lot to me, and I think means a lot to the JMU fans. And, also right before we went on air, I brought my son on, who is incredibly shy when he gets in front of you, but man, you've made a impact on him, and he's just a fan for life. So I want to say thank you both for coming on tonight. I want to wish you the best of luck as you continue to train for your CFL careers. There will be a lot of JMU Dukes tuning in and wanting to follow you guys. So be sure to continue to update us with your careers, through your social media, so we can follow you. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again soon. So thank you guys for spending your evening with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on the show.
Absolutely, guys.
Glad to represent the Dukes again.
Go Dukes. Well, with that, we'd like to bring on the voice of the Dukes, Dave Riggert, who we've had on for the second time in the last couple of weeks. But Dave, we are pretty deep into basketball season at this point. I know we have a couple of questions about football that we also want to get to with the new coaching staff, but I'm gonna start off with some basketball things, and I'd like to lead off with a tweet from Shane Metlin that I thought was pretty interesting after yesterday's game, where he talked about Quincy Allen, one of the top recruits ever for JMU, has been out for 6 weeks. Justin Amati has not played this year. He's a 4-year starter. TJ Bickerstaff, which, I didn't realize until, the tweet yesterday, but, he's been getting IVs before the game, according to Shane, and has been dealing with the remnants of whatever bug he's had that's kind of drained him a bit. Mike Green is in a bit of a slump, a career slump, and yet we're 17-2, have one of the top records in the country. We've been nationally ranked most of the year. So just going off of those talking points, talk about how special this team is, despite the disappointment of losing 2 of 3 games last week. But this is still one of the best teams to ever play basketball at JMU.
Yeah, already 17 wins. It's kind of crazy when last year they won 22, and that was the most since the 81-82 campaign when they made the NCAA tournament that year and upset North Carolina and everything like that. So, I sensed this pretty early from this team when we made the road trip to Michigan State and Kent State that first week, and just getting to know the guys, and you could just tell they were very connected, and they just have a different sense about them, just on how they carry themselves, how they kind of work together. Not that last year's team or the year before that or any of these other teams didn't connect, but this one just has a little bit more. It just has the it factor right now. They connect on and off the floor, and they really kind of get each other. And you can see that in the assists that they're averaging per game. When they're at their best, they're up near 20 assists per game. They had 23 against Louisiana Monroe on Thursday night, and when they struggled against App State, they had 10. So they didn't make shots. They didn't shoot the ball very well, but still, when they're sharing the basketball, this is one of the most unselfish teams that I've covered wherever I've been, and especially here at JMU. So I got a sense early on that this team was really connected, and you could tell early on that the transfers that came in, like Raekwon Horton, like TJ Bickerstaff, like Mike Green, all fit in really, really well. The guys accepted them. Sometimes you don't always know how that's going to work out, and they accepted them from the jump. And that's why they got out to the 14 consecutive wins. And they've had some bumps in the road. And I was even talking about this on the broadcast the last couple of games. At halftime, they were down by 10 to Louisiana Monroe on Thursday, led by 12 at halftime. And TJ Bickerstaff hadn't scored. Noah Friedel didn't have a field goal. Mike Green hadn't scored. Those are 3 big key pieces and 3 starters that hadn't done much. 0 field goals, and they were up by 12 points at halftime. So that talks about this team. And then even on Saturday against Marshall, they were up 3. It was a close game, but kind of the same thing. Mike was struggling again. There were guys that weren't having great games. Terrence Edwards really had a really tough first half and came back and played much better after halftime. But they're getting contributions from other people, not just the same guys every night. It's somebody different every single night, and that's the sign of a good basketball team.
And you make a good point. I mean, I know Terrence Edwards continues to get a lot of national recognition, but this isn't a team with one star and then a bunch of players just complimenting that one star. I mean, any night, it seems like we could have a player of the week from the Sun Belt from this team. I mean, we had Wooden go off for 31 points the other night. And, Noah Friedel the week before, I think he have 6 or 7 3-pointers, tying a career record for him.
26, yeah.
And, every game this year, it's one of the most diverse teams. When I've looked at the box score and you've seen the playing time, I mean, so many guys are averaging double minutes. So many guys are averaging double digit in scoring. To your point, it really emphasizes how much of a team effort this is. And I think that goes to say with Shane's tweet is that despite all of these hurdles that we've had to go through over the last few weeks, really over a month now, this team is still 17-2, still controls a lot of its destiny as it relates to the Sun Belt, still has a good net ranking. I believe we're 61 or 62 I saw today. So a lot of opportunity to still improve that. I do want to talk a little bit about how much the Sun Belt has really not made sense in a lot of the score results. And a couple of points that I wrote down before the show. A Georgia Southern team, which had one of the longest losing streaks this season, who's only 4-15, they're currently tied for third in the Sun Belt.
Right.
A Southern Miss team with a net of 224 has knocked off both JMU and Troy. And then you have an App State team, which is currently in they're one game ahead in first place, but they lost to Troy and they have an overtime loss to 10th ranked South Alabama. So there really hasn't been a lot of sense that it really is one of those leagues where it seems like any given night, the teams are vulnerable to beat anybody.
Yeah, and in the non-conference, the Sun Belt didn't have a very good non-conference, honestly. JMU did, App State did. They got the win over Auburn in their non-conference schedule. But for the most part, the Sun Belt didn't have a very good non-conference. Southern Miss wasn't very good. ODU wasn't very good. As you mentioned, Georgia Southern, they didn't win a non-conference game. They were 0-12 coming into conference play, and they're 4-3 so far. So it was interesting. You kind of thought that JMU and App State would kind of rule the roost in the Sun Belt, and they still may. But as you can tell early on here in the first 7 games of the Sun Belt schedule, you've got to bring it every single night. We saw ULM come here on Thursday. They had lost 8 consecutive games. They led JMU by 10 in the first half until the Dukes figured it out. They went and beat ODU after ODU crushed Marshall 91-66 on Thursday. So again, it doesn't really make sense. It's so hard to win on the road, although again, ULM just did that. So on any given night, there's enough really good players in this league that you've got to be careful any night, especially going on the road. It's going to be a challenge in any conference on the road. These coaches know each other so well. Mark Byington coming back into the league, they know Coach B and what he's all about and his style of basketball. So I think it's going to be a grind. I think the league is better than what I thought it was looking at it in the non-conference. And I think it's going to be a grind throughout this 18-game schedule.
And I think even the overall net of the conference has shot up from, I think, around 23 to up to about 18. And that's just a lot of, the benefit of some of the good teams are getting beat by the teams in the Sun Belt. But let me also look ahead a couple of weeks to the MAC Sun Belt Challenge. I believe I saw online, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we will find out. Do we find out the pairings of those teams this week? Is that what I saw?
Should find out this week sometime. Yeah, I think they're going to announce it early this week, maybe even tomorrow. So we should find out very soon who that'll be.
So just looking at the standings in the MAC right now, the top 4 teams in the MAC for the men are Akron in first place, and then tied for second is Bowling Green and Toledo, and then a tie for 4th place is Central Michigan and Western Michigan. So that's on the men's side. On the women's side, we have both Ball State and Toledo tied for first, the Toledo team that we already played this year, and then Kent State in third and Bowling Green in 4th. Can you talk a little bit about what you know of how those pairings work? And, are in the Toledo example, are you allowed to play a team that you've already played? Yeah.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's even been released by the Sun Belt, by the MAC on how that is. I know they were going to look at the net rankings and kind of put those teams together. So I think JMU, the men, I think will probably play Toledo or Akron, just because those are the top 2 teams right now in the MAC. Obviously a good win at Kent State early in the season, but I'm interested on the women's side to see if Toledo is tied with somebody else. I would venture to say that they would put the Dukes with the team that isn't Toledo. I guess that makes sense to me. And again, sometimes these conferences, the NCAA, they don't always do things that make sense. So maybe they have a rematch with Toledo. And since it was a good game before, JMU can go to Toledo and maybe get revenge. But I would think that they would put them with someone else, so you don't have a rematch of a non-conference team in the same season. But again, they've never said that they won't do that or they can't do that. There's been very, very little information on how they're going to put teams together. besides just kind of going off the net. But there's been no specifics on how that'll happen. But I think it'll be close to what we see with the standings. Since JMU's one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, they'll get one of the top teams that are in the MAC right now.
And you make a good point that I want to reiterate. I was listing the standings of the team, but the standings don't necessarily reflect the net.
Right.
And the purpose of this MAC Sun Belt Challenge is to allow teams late in the season to compete against someone that's of, close or equal net ranking to help improve their postseason opportunities. So,
and that's going to be a huge basketball game on February the 10th, because no matter who it is, it's going to be a MAC team that's really good, that has a pretty good net ranking, about the same as what JMU is. Remember the old bracket busters that ESPN used to put together for the mid-majors? This is essentially what this is. And
right.
For JMU, I still think they're in the conversation for an at-large. I don't know that they can lose too many more, but
Sure.
that would be a huge one to keep them in the at-large conversation right now, to
Right.
see, as long as they don't lose too many more. If they wouldn't happen to win the Sun Belt tournament, then all of a sudden they might be able to get an at-large if they only have one more loss and they have a win over a MAC team that has a top 60 net ranking. So that's going to be a major challenge and a really big game come February 10th for both teams that play in that.
Right, because of all likelihood, the game in Boone next weekend and that MAC game will be the only top 100 net games that we have left. So, Steve, let me hand it over to you.
Sure. Just a basketball question, and then we'll jump into some football. I want to get you to talk a little bit about how coachable these guys are. And we saw last week against App State, and Coach Byington was aggravated that they had coached during the week about, the ball fake, going up to the rim, and guys weren't doing it. I saw it like crazy against ULM, and I saw it a ton yesterday. So just talk a little bit about that, because a lot of teams aren't coachable, but I think not that our teams aren't, but I think it's important just to have you talk about how coachable these guys are, because you talk about how tight they are, but just talk a little bit how coachable they are.
That's the fun part of my job, is when I get to travel with them. I'm pretty much in all the meetings with them. I get to see them watch film. I get to watch practice from start to finish, and really kind of see behind the scenes of what's going on with the guys. And this is a very mature team. In college basketball, especially with the transfer portal now, it's become a little older. Obviously, it was kind of the one and done era there before the transfer portal. And it was becoming very rare that you would have seniors on a team. But this is a team that's very veteran. They brought in a couple of grad guys in TJ and Mike, and they fit right in and very coachable. Those are guys, I think, because they're such a veteran team. And I remember Talk Molson said this a year ago that, I've scored a lot of points, 1,500. I just want to win now. This is my fifth year, my sixth. I just want to win. It doesn't matter. I don't want to score a ton of points. I will if I have to, but I just want to do whatever it'll take to win. And I get the same sense with these guys. And even Terrence Edwards, he's in his fourth year, so he's been here for a long time too. So he's a veteran guy, and it does what you're talking about with the shot fakes and everything like that. I've seen that firsthand, and they're always going to kind of veer away at times from maybe what they were coached and kind of do their own thing at times, but they usually reel it back in. That's the one thing this team, I think, has done much better than other teams in the past is, all teams are going to get coached hard and coached well, and these guys will listen. And they've been really good with the scout when they watch film to carry that over onto the film, because that doesn't always happen. You can talk about it in the film room, but you have to carry that over onto the court. And that isn't always the case. These guys really take a lot of pride in carrying that film room onto the court, and they get scout stops on defense where, hey, they're running this certain play. This is how we defend it, and it carries over to the court. But these guys have been very coachable. I think with some of that veteran leadership, that they're just willing to do whatever it takes to win basketball games right now. And the one thing, even from early on, kind of me seeing that this team is a little bit different, is they're able to adjust in game and make adjustments. That ULM game, they weren't playing very well, and then they figured out, well, defense can lead to offense. We're not shooting it well, but defense can lead to offense. And they're finding different ways to win basketball games this year. Whatever it takes, they're willing to do. And if that's something during the game or in practice, this team has been this has been one of the most coachable teams, and they ask a lot of questions. And the coaching staff, because they're so veteran, they reach out to them and ask them the questions on, how do you think we could defend this better? And so they really work hand in hand. It's been hand in hand. It's been pretty seamless throughout the entire year.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of the 1982 team. they're more athletic than the 82 team, and I'm not dissing my guys from back then, but faster and more athletic, but they remind me a lot of that team. They feed off the crowd. They're just good. I mean, they're so much better than most of the talent. The teams are great in the Sun Belt. I mean, I don't want to diss anybody, and I'm not, but at the end of the day, these guys really have the talent to turn it on and just blow somebody out of a gym when they decide they want to do it. And it's just kind of fun to watch.
Got to be a little bit more consistent with that mindset. Yeah. But you're right. They do have the ability to do that.
Yeah. Free throws are driving me nuts, but we'll talk about that another time. Let me give a plug too for the MAC Challenge. On the day of the MAC Challenge, women's lacrosse has #1 North Carolina coming to town. So at noon on the 10th, if you want to watch a little lacrosse, it's going to be a little chilly.
Absolutely.
But get over there and watch a little lacrosse and then come over and watch the MAC Challenge, which I think will be fun. Let's talk a little football. You've got to spend some time with Coach Chesney. You did a great – if people didn't listen to it this week, they need to go back and listen. When you had him on to talk about the coaches, and he was talking about, who he hired and why he hired them was a great, a great broadcast piece that you had during the week. But talk a little bit about the culture change that you've seen with Coach Chesney, and again, no disrespect to the former folks, Cignetti and his crew at all, but it's always different. Whoever comes in, it's a different culture. Just talk a little bit about the culture change that you're seeing.
Yeah, it was pretty evident right away for me when everything was going down and Coach Cignetti left for Indiana, and obviously a lot of the coaches decided to go with him. When Coach Chesney came in, I came in and did an interview with him right away. I think it was the first or second day he was there. Went into his office, and honestly, just walking into the football offices, it was just different. It was almost kind of a breath of fresh air. Not that it was bad before, but with Coach Cignetti and just how he ran things, I think there were some folks that kind of walked on eggshells, to be honest with you, and just it was Coach Cignetti's show, and he didn't let his assistant coaches talk to the media except for me on our pregame show with the coordinators. But the other coaches would never talk to the media. It was his voice. It was one voice. It was his team. It was his program, and I think some people walked on eggshells around him just because they didn't want to ruffle any feathers, and they knew, again, everything kind of had to go through him. And this was when Coach Chesney took over. He's such a player's coach. He's so personable. I mean, when I had him on the other day, I ended our interview and was talking to him for just a second. He goes, "Hey, whenever you need me on your show, just text me. I'll always come on whenever you need me." Well, I've never had. I don't want to say never. I very seldom have had that with a head coach, especially of a Division I football team. So he has come in, and it is almost a breath of fresh air. It's a complete 180 from what was going on. And again, there's many different ways to run a football program. Coach Cignetti's way works. There's no doubt about it. So there's nothing wrong with what he was doing. It's just different. It's just a different culture right now. And I think that the one thing also that stood out to me is after I did that interview, I think the second day that Coach Chesney was here, he's just like, okay, practice is starting. And Coach Robo was the acting head coach. He was leading practice, but Coach Chesney wanted to hustle down and go down to practice. So I went with him. Chris Brooks and I went with Coach Chesney and just kind of watching some things during practice. And he started to implement some competition drills that they were going to implement into their bowl practices. He was not going to take over practice, but he was going to be there and going to implement some things that were going to be a part of his practices come the spring and the fall. And the players absolutely dove into what he was talking about. And they were having fun. There was hooting and hollering. They were very competitive on everything that they were doing. And that's why he implemented these drills. But I had some players come up to me, and I had some guys that were going to be graduating, and this was going to be their final game of the bowl game. And they said, "Man, I wish I had another year to play for Coach Chesney." And then you had some of the other guys that were just like, "We've never had this much fun at practice." And this was the first time that Coach Chesney was there, and they were talking about how much fun they were having at practice, how this competition, the drills that they were implementing they were a fun piece that was going to, again, kind of get the juices flowing and just always make everything a competitive drill and a winner and a loser and let's go hard, but let's have fun doing it. So just that really stood out with the culture that, hey, we're having fun at practice. We've got music playing. It's just different. And I think it was Coach Cignetti. It was time for him to move on. He wanted a different opportunity, and best of luck to him. But it's a different feel right now around the football program.
Yeah, just like in business or in your professional life, sometimes a fresh start, right, is what you need. And maybe that's what the program needed as well. Remember Francis Meehan mentioning some of that, right, before. I think he's going on to be a GA under Signetti's staff now. Exciting opportunity for him. But Dave, thank you so much for hopping on as always. You are very much on my weekly agenda of podcasts to listen to on ESPN Richmond. So please keep doing great things there. For our listeners, if you haven't listened, he interviewed Tyler Purdy, a running back commit, Jacob Dobbs, and Jesse Ramil about a week and a half ago. For our listeners, Dave, any sneak peeks on any upcoming players or upcoming commits that you'll have on your show moving forward?
It's a little harder now to get. I was able to get those guys the week before school started, before classes started. But now that they're enrolled at classes, now I have to go through the folks at JMU. I could just send those guys a message and they could pop on just because they weren't officially Dukes yet. So now I have to go through the channels, although I don't think that's going to be an issue. Now, in the past, it was, and that's kind of, again, the culture change that I probably could have requested to try and get some of the transfers. Well, we never heard from the transfers. We didn't hear from Phoenix Sproles last year when he came on campus. We didn't hear from Jordan McLeod just because the coaching staff and Coach Signetti in particular wanted to keep them on the down low and not let them talk yet because they just got here and they don't need to talk. It's fine. This is a program that's not about them. But I think this staff will be a little bit more lenient as far as getting some guys to talk. So I am going to sit down here over the next couple of weeks with every one of the assistant coaches. As you mentioned earlier, the assistant coaches were all announced earlier this week, and we knew most of them. David Sims was the one that we didn't know, and some of the quality control guys that Coach Chesney has brought on. I love this coaching staff. I think this coaching staff is tremendous. I think he did a great job of putting really, really good coaches in these spots. And I love keeping Coach Robo and Coach Whitley, but I'm going to have a chance to sit down with every single one of the coaches, and Dukes fans will be able to get to know all of these guys a little bit more because I'll be able to go in depth and go one-on-one with them and kind of get to know their backgrounds, why they took the job, and what to expect from their position group, or if they're a coordinator, their side of the football. So I'll get a chance to sit down with every one of the coaches here coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. I was going to say that's a good segue to my second question, which is about the staff, because I'm not sure, folks that are listening typically see my tweets. I noticed that Coach Chesney brought on two coaches in particular that were positional coaches at Holy Cross with Chris Sarkowski and Kyle Barnes, where their O-line and DB coaches specifically as defensive analysts. So I really love some of that coaching experience, some recruiting prowess, familiarity with the system. I think those were two really underrated hires on his part. But outside, I know you had that awesome interview with Coach Chesney earlier this week. Tell JMU Nation a little bit about what stood out about the staff from you from a high level, and maybe from some of your hands-on or personal experiences in the last couple of days. Like, what stood out on the staff that Chesney's put together?
Well, I think the one thing is just Coach Chesney, for the most part, knew a lot of the guys that he was hiring. Like Lyle Hemphill, his defensive coordinator, they coached 20 years ago together and have kept in contact. They followed each other's career. And Coach Chesney knew at some point in time that if he had a chance to get Coach Hemphill on his staff, that he would do it. And certainly he was a co-defense coordinator in ACC last year. So, and he had a really good defense. And then he brings a coach with him and Zach Sparber to coach the linebackers that he wasn't a position coach, but now he's ready to be a position coach. And I think that's big to keep that continuity on defense. And that's part of the reason that he hired Coach Hemphill, because he had Zach Sparber to become his linebackers coach and have that familiarity with that whatever style of defense they want to run, what schemes they want to run. Those two know it like the back of their hands right now. So I think that's important, because on the other side of the football, obviously they had a lot of coaches come in with that Holy Cross experience. And I've got to talk to Dean Kennedy quite a bit, and I think he is going to be phenomenal. He's been at some pretty good places. He worked with Dan Mullen at Florida and at Mississippi State, and he's worked with Anthony Richardson, who's now with the Indianapolis Colts, who was at Florida for a while. So he's been with some really talented people so far, and I've been impressed to see what he's done in his short time as an offensive coordinator, being able to adjust to whatever type of personnel he has. They obviously had Matthew Sluka and more of a running quarterback, so he adjusted his style and was able to make it really work. And I had a chance to talk to him quite a bit down at the bull practices, and he's just like, man, we'll adjust to whatever we need to, whatever our strengths are. That's what we're going to adjust our offense to. And I've been on a lot of different systems with some really talented people that I've learned from. So I just think that he's brought together a staff that has been able to learn from some of the best in the country. Some young coaches that are excited. Coach DeMichael, who's on defense, who's also going to be the recruiting coordinator. He has so much energy. He's awesome. I think he's going to do a great job. So there's just there's a lot of familiarity with the staff with Coach Chesney, and I think that's big, all bringing them together. And another key piece to this is that Coach Chesney got to see Coach Robo and Coach Whitley work during the bull practices, and that's part of why he wanted those guys to stay, because he fit the style of coach that he wanted. And obviously he wants to bring in great guys that are able to teach these student athletes and make them into better players, because again, at this level, it's all about player development. You've got to have that or you're not going to be able to win at this level. And I think he's brought in a lot of guys that are going to be able to make guys much, much better. And then I know obviously you're going to follow recruiting. You talked about the breaking news earlier tonight, and they're recruiting nationwide. Again, the linebacker from that was at Fresno State and USC.
Yep.
I mean, they've got kids coming from California. They're offering kids from Texas. That's just JMU's brand is big right now. They should take advantage of that. They are taking it. They get it. JMU was one of the hottest tickets in college football this year, like it or not. And most of our fans love it. Our opponents' fans, they hate it. They despise it. But it is what it is. And we were a national brand this past season. And they're taking advantage of that, because people in California probably know about JMU now. People in Texas probably know about JMU now. It's really exciting to see, because I think they're going to be able to go to some places that they've never gone before. And I think they're going to bring in some really, really good talent. I love what they've done so far with the portal, and even with the high school kids that they brought in. I think that's underrated on how good they did. I know they lost a lot to Indiana and other places, but they brought in a really good class, and it was a really challenging time, because they were very – When Coach Chesney got here, he mentioned this on the interview I did with him earlier this week, is that when he got here, there were no phone calls being made to recruits, because there wasn't a staff. I mean, there were 4 coaches left over, but they were trying to handle everything that was going on and handle the bowl practices and handle the team that was in place right now. So you can't blame them. But then he brought in those coaches from Holy Cross that he knew he was going to hire, and those guys did a really, really good job.
Yeah. 100%. I think too, like at Holy Cross, he mentioned specifically they recruited at national level, right? So they've got relationships with kids from all over the country. You mentioned California. I think there's an official visit right now with a Texas recruit that might be in town. So like, I'm not surprised to see that. Even closer to home, I think 2 coaching hires that he made were really exciting. Sam Daniels, who was a stud defensive tackle here when I was in school, I think in 2007, 2008. And then even Justin Harper from ODU. I mean, he's well known in Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic area. Virginia Tech alum, was drafted by the Ravens. Curious to hear your thoughts. I know if you've met those 2 personally, but love to hear. I mean, those are 2 more homegrown Mid-Atlantic talents, but great additions to the team.
And that also talks about Coach Chesney just getting it. I mean, getting a former Duke to come back and coach his alma mater, it's different when you're coaching your alma mater. It just is. And for him to understand that, and again, he didn't know Sam Daniels, but he knew a lot of people that did, and reached out to him when he got the job that, hey, this is a guy you should look at. So again, he did his homework, talked to Sam, and I think that's a huge hire to get someone to come back to their alma mater and be able to coach. And you're right. I think he's going to do a great job coaching in the Commonwealth and in the 757, as will Justin Harper. That's another big hire too. You're right. Stole him away from ODU. That's always a good thing also, to get him away from a conference rival. But again, he was at a high level. He got drafted by the Ravens in 2008. Again, he was a very good football player. So that knowledge that he's learned at Virginia Tech when again they were pretty good at that point in time, and then learning in the NFL, I think he's going to be a tremendous addition to this coaching staff. So you're right. Again, it's great to be able to maybe go to different places and go to Texas, California, wherever it is, but you have to have the kids still in the Commonwealth that want to come to James Madison. And with the success that they've had in beating UVA a year ago, the last time they played Tech, they won that football game. And again, they'll have a chance here in a couple of years, but they have to win the state, or at least come close, and be able to keep a lot of these kids that are, again, homegrown kids in Virginia that still want to come to James Madison. That's huge. And Coach Chesney gets it. He recruited Virginia. One of his top receiver last year at Holy Cross was from Virginia.
Jalen Coker.
So, yeah,
really
absolutely.
well. Yeah.
So, again, he gets it. He understands the regional recruiting, and that was part of why he got those two guys. And I think those are two tremendous hires that, again, when he came on board, he says, I've got to get some guys that can recruit the state. And, hey, there's a kid that's going to come back and play at his alma mater. Heck yeah, let's do it.
So, Dave, my last question for you, and I know the coaching fraternity is just that. It's a fraternity with a lot of guys having relationships across the country. But one thing JMU's social media team has done a good job of pointing out is it seems as if Coach Chesney has some connections to some of those national names in the coaching world that maybe, you know, I don't think the average fan probably knew that there was those connections. Obviously, we saw Coach Harborough, Coach Kelly with their comments on Coach Chesney. Just any insight that you may have into why he is so connected. I know I heard in one of his interviews where he said, you know, kind of on his own dime, he traveled the country kind of learning from some of these guys in the offseason. I'm just curious if you have any insight into where some of these connections and comments are coming from across the coaching landscape.
Well, I know one thing he's done is, you know, and he made mention of this in his introductory press conference, that when he was coaching, whether that was at Assumption College or at Salva Regina Division III school or at Holy Cross before he came to JMU, he wanted to coach his program like it was a FBS program already or an NFL program. So he reached out. He's been very proactive in how he's been a head coach. He uses a lot of analytics. And again, that's obviously a big thing in every sport now. But in football, some coaches use it, some don't. Obviously, baseball analytics are everywhere, and in basketball, it's starting to become a big deal. But he's worked into analytics a lot, and he's visited a lot of pro camps to meet with their staffs. He's visited a lot of FBS programs, but when he was at the FCS level, to kind of see how they did things and what things that he could implement into his FCS program or Division II program at the time that would carry on. So I think he's done a lot of legwork to try and meet as many people as he possibly can, to learn as much as he possibly can, to be the best coach that he possibly can. So I think that's just him being proactive throughout his entire career, and I think that's still going to continue for him. Again, he wants to coach this program almost like it's a pro program, and you know, have some fun with it. And really those competition periods are a big thing that I talked about earlier. So I think it's just him getting out and networking and trying to find, because again, especially in football, any coach, they're all copycats, you know, but they want to find something that may work for that team, or always have something in your playbook that might work best for the team that you have that year. So they're always looking for different things and always trying to steal from other coaches and then learn from other coaches, not just steal, but, you know, go talk to them about, hey, why does this work? Why does it work so well for you? We're maybe trying to do the same thing. Tell me why it works for you and it doesn't for us, and just some little intricacies to everything that they're doing. So he's a guy that gets to know a lot of people and tries to continue to always learn. You can never stop learning in this business, and that's something that I think he's going to continue to do. And that's why he's been able to connect with so many different people.
Yeah, and again, that obviously probably doesn't hurt recruiting when you have some of those big
No
names
doubt.
raving about you. So I'm sure there's some, you know, intentional purpose behind.
There's no question.
Not an accident. Hey, I know I said the last question was the last, but I do want to ask you, because we had on Dave Taylor and Kurt Dudley on a few weeks ago. We were talking about kind of the landscape of the JMU broadcast community with Corey Spector and how you all engage. I just wanted to ask you, what's it like to work with such a talented group of voices around this program that have been doing it, you know, in Kurt and David's case for so many years.
Right.
But now with Corey coming in and all the talent and passion that he has for the program, maybe take us a little behind the scenes about how you all work together in terms of your joint coverage, but also your individual focus on telling the JMU story on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's very fortunate to obviously be in the position that I am, but you know, those guys have been awesome to work with. And when I first got the job 2.5 years ago now, one of the first people to reach out to me was Kurt Dudley. And again, he's obviously been around for a long time and been a staple at James Madison, but there's no ill will to what we do. We're all trying to do the same thing and pump up James Madison. There's just no doubt. And we all get along really well. We all share information. We're not trying to hide things from one another. And again, I went out with Corey for dinner the first week that I was here to kind of talk about things. So it's been really fun to be able to work with those guys hand in hand and, you know, kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I was talking about Coach Chesney kind of trying to always learn and go out and meet different people. Well, Kurt and Corey and I and David and other people are always talking to each other. We talk before games, we talk after games, we're talking during the week. The one thing I wish I was on campus more. I'm over there a lot, obviously, but with me being employed by Harrisonburg Radio Group, that's my everyday duty there. So I'm not always at JMU, where those guys are for the most part, especially Kurt and Corey. So they get to be over there and be around the teams maybe even a little bit more than I do. So that's one area where I wish we could share an office together and always kind of bounce ideas off. But yeah, it's been pretty special. We've got a good group of people that really are committed to JMU and really want to tell the stories of the student athletes and the teams. And again, it's easy to do when you have so much success. It's a little harder when there are some lean years and things like that. But with the way the athletic department's rolling right now, it's a fun time to be a Duke, and all of us we certainly get along really well together and have a lot of fun.
Well, and I will say to you, as somebody who's done this on the high school side, people do not appreciate just how hard it is to do a broadcast without an analyst. And I know many a night you're doing it solo. So just know on behalf of all the JMU fans who enjoy your broadcasts, we appreciate the effort and the amount of time and hours you put into these broadcasts to make them as professional and enjoyable as they are for the listener and the viewer experience. And as always, thank you for your willingness to spend some of your Sunday night, because I know you got to get back at it tomorrow morning. So we'll let you get back to the NFL games and stuff that are on. But thanks as always, Dave.
No problem. Anytime. Thank you, Jonathan.
All right. Talk to you soon. With that, we'll bring on the rest of the crew for final thoughts. Guys, another great episode tonight. Always appreciate the voice of our former players, and to see them having success in the pro level and getting to experience it north of the border is going to be cool for all of us to see. And hopefully we start to see some more names get some shots, whether it's in the NFL, the new XFL kind of merger that's happening, or the CFL. Lots of opportunities for us to continue to root on former Dukes. But Taylor, start with you. Your final thoughts. Another busy week in JMU athletics as JMU men's basketball and women's try to keep their streaks intact and try to continue to compete for the top of the Sun Belt standings. Any thoughts you have as we end the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, well, the men traveled down to Norfolk for their second game in Norfolk this year against Old Dominion. Second game against Old Dominion, first conference game, third game of that series this year, because one was an out-of-conference game that was scheduled outside of the two conference games they play. So always looking forward to playing Old Dominion. And then I can't emphasize how much the game in Boone on Saturday is going to be. It's nationally televised. I think they have yet to announce whether it's ESPNU or ESPN2. But that is a game, as I mentioned earlier, that it's one of the probably two chances we have left to play a top 100 net team. And winning games on the road means more in the net. So just great opportunity for this team. The team is playing really well, and all those hurdles that we listed earlier, they're only going to get cleaned up the further you go into the season. So this is one of the best basketball teams to ever play at JMU. I think with the excitement of the top 25 ranking and the undefeated season, all of that, it was hard to take as a fan those two games and two losses in 3 games, and it kind of let a lot of air out. But if you've been at the Atlantic Union Bank Center the last couple of weekends for some of the games, I mean, the atmosphere, the electricity, I do want to continue to give another shout out to the students. They have just made that place a lot of fun, putting them right behind the baskets. And, and then the women's team, I can't praise the women's team enough for getting another Royal Rivalry victory. I believe that matchup is 6.5 to 2.5. So once again, for the second year in a row, well ahead of Old Dominion. But this is a special year for basketball for both teams. And I think Pensacola is going to be fun. And I think you're going to have an opportunity to see both teams dancing in March. And so go Dukes. Excited to see the rest of the season play out, and looking forward to being back at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. I'll probably be there, I think, Thursday in 2 weeks for the Coastal Carolina game. So Steve or Michael, whoever's next, I'll pass it to y'all.
Yeah, I'll go next. My final thoughts is this. If no one's following Dave Riggert right now, go ahead and follow. He's got an awesome show on ESPN Richmond, which I religiously follow. Anytime his recordings go on Spotify, I'm the first one to go in there and listen to it. This is a brand new team. It's a brand new program, new head coaches. It's going to feel, it's going to look, it's going to sound different from what we've been used to over the past 5 years. So tune in. He has some awesome insights and interviews. And I believe, if I remember from earlier today, he's going to have a lot of the assistant coaches on. So it's really exciting time. And for those keeping score, we're going to have at least 31 new players on this roster come fall. And there's probably going to be some attrition. We've got spring ball right around the corner. Everyone knows right after spring ball, there's going to be another round of portal activity of people coming and going. Some of these transfer guys that we got, maybe they don't stick around. Maybe they don't fit in. We've seen that year over year, and we find new guys. But right now, we've got 14 new high school recruits. If anyone's been on Twitter, you probably noticed a few of them have already enrolled on campus. And we've got 17 portal players. I think it's evenly distributed between offense and defense. So really exciting time. We've got some new blood into the building. They had their first round of workouts, I believe, the other day. And from what I've heard, they got their asses kicked, which is probably what we need a little bit as we go into spring ball. So really exciting time, and go Dukes. We'll see what shows he's got cooking here in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Steve, your final thoughts.
Yeah, we've got some good things going on campus, and I'll start with basketball and going down to Old Dirty on Wednesday. It's not a rivalry till you actually win Old Dominion, and you haven't been winning. So right now it is just the Royal we win, and the everything school continues to take it. So we're going to come down there, smack you around in Norfolk, and then we'll head back home, rest up a little bit, and then go down to Boone. That Boone game, like Taylor said, is a big deal. If you can get up to Madison, the women are playing 2 home games. So they're home on the 24th and home on the 27th. They have App State at home on Saturday. If you can't, get over to Kindred Spirits, listen to Laburnum Park and watch the App State game with us at the bar. But that App State game on the 27th is huge. App State has been averaging about 2,500 fans, except for one game, Auburn. When Auburn came to town in Boone, they had 7,000 people. They'll bring 6,000 or 7,000 people Saturday because we mean everything to them. It's a big deal when they play us. It's a big deal when we play them. I'm not playing it down at all. They are our rival. They're the ones that I care the most about. And there's a lot of these teams in here that I love in the Sun Belt. That's why I love being in it. But App State's the one that I want to get. They're the ones you want to win every year. And so at every game. And so it's a big deal game for them too. The men also then are home with Coastal and home at ODU on the 1st and the 3rd. So, be watching for those. Get up to the AUBC if you can. I've got to get up there. I may get up there for the Coastal game and the ODU game on the 1st and the 3rd. So that's the plan. On the football side, love what Chesney and his crew are doing. Again, I echo what Michael said. Listen to what Riggert's doing. Riggert is giving you behind the scenes deep dives when he's interviewing these guys. And, some breaking news tonight is he's going to have all the assistants. And those will be 20 to 30-minute interviews every time. And so it's really good insight to what's going on in the program. I love what's happening. I like what the culture change is. I like the shift. Again, no disrespect to the crew we had last time, but I like where we are now. And I have a great feeling for this team. I can't wait to see what they're going to do, but I have a feeling this team's going to be special in 2024. So, let's get out of this cold weather. It's going to be warm at the end of this week. So let's get out there and cheer for our Dukes.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. I love what you said about App State because I'm already starting to see on Twitter some of their fans saying, "See, we own you and everything." I guess they forgot the win that we had last year. So, hey, that's what rivalries are about. You have your great moments and your moments where they're trolling us, but it shows that there's
you hate us because you hate us.
Hey, but they've got some wins now. So now it's our turn to get back at them. But appreciate it as always, guys. Thanks for another great show. Couple of housekeeping items. Want to mention that if you're somebody who's a JMU season ticket holder, JMU Athletics sent out the season ticket renewal information. So check your email, check jmusports.com. If you're somebody who's interested in renewing those season tickets, now's the best time to make those plans. If you're somebody who doesn't have season tickets, kind of paying attention to what the athletic ticket staff is going to be sending out over the weeks to come. Really important time. So get your Duke Club donations in and make sure you're focused on getting those priority points and everything that's necessary to secure your seat in Bridgeport Stadium in the fall of 2024. Also want to, as always, mention our merch on JMUSoundoff.com. We love seeing the shirts around the Atlantic Union Bank Center. Taylor's got one on. Taylor, show us the back. It looks so awful sharp. the Sound Off logo on the back. If you could spin around, I'm going to make
It's
a
tough
model.
to turn around. There's
I know,
it's tight space here.
Okay, well, it's your modeling contract. Is your checks in the mail. But as always, JMUSoundoff.com, putting up some new shirts over the next couple of days as well. So get your Everything School shirt, your Jimmy, the little Jimmy basketball or football shirts. Got lots of great options, and appreciate everyone who has supported those. And remember, only a few hours left to get your tickets for the unique men's basketball experience in support of the Montpelier Collective. So follow the Montpelier Collective accounts, get your tickets for a chance to win that once-in-a-lifetime experience with Coach Byington. And with that, thank you to listeners. We'll be back next week, Sunday night, 8 p.m. for another episode of JMU Sound Off. Go Dukes.